What's up, YouTube? Capital G here, giving you guys a quick card discussion on a card that has become, without a doubt, in the last month, one of my favorite cards in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a card that is absolutely meta relevant right now. I recently added 3 copies of it to my Salamangreat deck, and I am seeing absolutely tremendous success from this card. It's one of the best value cards in the entire game, a card that can easily fit into a lot of tier 1.5 and tier 2 decks, especially if those decks have just a couple of good defensive options at their disposal. And it's a card that honestly at its lowest only costs about $1 and at its highest only costs about $3, but I don't really see that many people talking about it, despite the fact that it's just so ridiculously good right now, and that's why I wanted to do a video on it. So the card I am talking about is Lost Wind. This is a card that came out of Raging Tempest. Some of us might be familiar with it because Paleozoics used to run it way back when, you know, Zodiac was the top dog, and it was very useful in Paleo because not only could you be able to use it twice, but each time you activated it, obviously, you got the ability to summon a Paleozoic trap monster, you know, basically out of your graveyard. So Paleozoic got they got value out of this card pretty much that was it was unrivaled in all of Yu-Gi-Oh, and that definitely still stands true. This is a card that is absolutely amazing in a deck like Paleozoic, but I really think that across the board, if you're playing a deck that even wants to play defense a little bit, I'm actually talking about playing purple traps, this is a card that I really believe that you should straight up be playing right now, because the amount of value that Lost Wind adds, especially when you're going first, is actually just out of this world. So first off, what does Lost Wind actually do? For those of you who are just unfamiliar with the card, Lost Wind says target one special summon monster on the field. It has its effects negated. Also, its original attack is half if a monster is special summoned from your opponent's extra deck while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, which is weird. I don't even know how that would happen, honestly. It says you can set this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. So essentially, if you activate this card, or if it's in your graveyard somehow, and your opponent goes back into their extra deck, you get to reset it on the field, and you get an additional use out of it. It's just going to be banished at that point. So some of you guys might be looking at that effect, and you're thinking, okay, so if I go first, this card is basically just a breakthrough skill and permanence effect veiler. What exactly is so good about it, Cap? Why are you speaking so glowingly about it? Well, there is one downside. If you are playing against, let's just say, a deck that has a powerful normal summon, maybe something like Altergeist Marionetter, or if your opponent goes for something like the Armageddon normal summon, your Neospace Connector, you're not actually going to be able to stop those normal summon monsters' effects. So that is a little bit of a drawback. However, with most of these combo decks, or basically any deck that wants to go in its extra deck at all, your opponent's normal summon is really just a way to facilitate them going into their combos, and those combos almost always rely on the extra deck. Your opponent's not just going to go normal summon Armageddon Knight, drop a Malicious in the graveyard, pass turn. You know that they're going to banish that Malicious, or they're going to find some way to try to get twice sold off the Neospace Connector, etc., etc. So when you have the ability to use the Lost Wind on the extra deck monster, whether it be Summon Sorceress, or, you know, it can be something like a Sky Striker Kagari, it just kind of serves the same purpose as the breakthrough skill or the impermanence would. Now, the benefit is, and this is one of the reasons why I like, you know, a card like Lost Wind over some of those other cards, is the fact that Lost Wind will actually not just negate the monster's effect. So it's on par going first with something like Impermanence or a Breakthrough skill, but it also has the added bonus of making the monster have half its original attack. Now, some people might be like, why exactly is that so important? It's important because in a lot of situations, like let's just say you're playing Altergeist or Salamangreats or something like, you know, dinosaurs, right? If you leave a mid-sized beater on the field, like a Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf or an Altergeist Marionetter, or even something like an Oviraptor, if your opponent goes into a boss monster, for instance, like a Summon Sorceress, and you do hit it with a Lost Wind instead of having a breakthrough skill or an impermanence, it means that your monster is not going to be susceptible to being ran over by battle. And while some people might think that that's not that big of a deal, you have to understand, again, if you're playing a deck that may not be as good as your opponent's deck inherently, you need every single small edge that you can get. Another thing that I really like about Lost Wind in, I guess, comparison to other cards that are similar, especially going first like impermanence or breakthrough skill, is that effect negation that you get, and when you're chopping your opponent's original attack in half so that they can't really use their monster effectively as a beater, that effect is 100% permanent. This means that if you happen to negate your opponent's, for instance, Thunder Dragon Colossus, it's never actually really going to be a threat at that point. They're going to have to go into another monster or do something else, because that monster during the end phase or during the next turn or whatever, let's just say you can't kill it for a couple of turns, it's never going to be a viable threat, because its effect is not going to magically come back online. Its attack is not going to reset at the end of the turn. So that's another thing that Lost Wind has against the other cards. Now, one thing that I think about Yu-Gi-Oh right now is very important if you're not kind of playing, you know, a combo deck. If you're playing a deck that wants to be a little bit defensive, like an Altergeist or an ABC, etc., etc., I think that you need cards that are really good going first and really good going second. It's one of the reasons why hand traps and cards like Infinite and Permanence are so played right now, because they're cards that can serve going first or going second. If you're going second, I think Impermanence is probably an A+ card when it comes to traps, and if you're going first, it's probably about maybe an A- card. So, you know, it kind of is a card that's never technically dead. Lost Wind actually serves kind of that same purpose. Now, one of the problems that I have with like the Solemns in comparison is that the Solemn cards are incredibly good front running, right? Solemn Warning and Solemn Judgment are super duper good if you're going first with a deck like Altergeist, because Solemn Judgment basically protects you against anything. Solemn Warning, your opponent's biggest summon, you basically get rid of that, but those cards aren't really all that good if you're actually going second. Solemn Strike is okay because your opponent might activate a monster effect and you can just get rid of it, so you get a little bit of value. But what I like about Lost Wind is the fact that your opponent still can just walk straight into this card even when they have big boss monsters on the board. I mean, seriously, if I had $1 for every time my opponent had a Conductor Tyranno or a Thunder Dragon Colossus, maybe a Dragon Buster on field, I set a couple of traps and they were just thinking, well, you can't do anything with those trap cards. My boss monster's already on the field, only for them to go into battle phase, me flip over Lost Wind in the damage step and totally wreck their shit, I'd be someone with a decent amount of dollars, because that is one of the best applications with this card, and quite frankly, it's something your opponent will never see coming. When you look at all the trap cards that are pretty decent in the meta, this is one of the only ones that can consistently be used in the damage step. Then, since we do live in a landscape where nobody plays battle traps, people just assume when they go into battle phase and they attack a monster that there isn't actually going to be any response, especially in the damage step when it's too late for your opponent to use things like Conductor Tyranno or ABC's discard effect. So that's one of the good things about this card, is even if you're going second and your opponent does have those established monsters on the field, it actually can still be good and valuable. And let's talk about that value for a second, because for me, it was the single biggest reason why I started playing Lost Wind to begin with. When I found myself getting multiple activations of the card, I realized that it was almost single-handedly taking over games and putting me in a huge advantageous position. Furthermore, I really didn't have to change my game plan or my play style to really get more disruptions against my opponent, and their natural plays and their natural play style were basically facilitating me getting those multiple disruptions against them. So it's something that is definitely excellent against this card. But let's put it into perspective, right? Let's say you're playing against a deck like Sky Strikers. We all acknowledge one of the best decks in the meta. If Sky Strikers start off with a pretty standard play of maybe going for Mobilize Engage or something like that, then summoning Kagari, chances are they're going to activate Kagari looking to get back that Mobilize Engage. Well, if you activate Lost Wind on them, not only are you going to just straight up negate the Kagari, but now you put your opponent in a little bit of a bind. I think that you put them in a position that they have multiple options, but I don't think that the options are actually good. They can try to press on and go for something like Shizuku, getting a search during the end phase, but guess what? In that case, you actually get to just reset the Lost Wind, so you really didn't even take a neg1, and you have the ability to stop their next summon of Kagari, or your opponent can just end on Kagari and not let you get the Lost Wind. But in that case, you've basically stifled their play and they're really not getting to where they wanted to go. It's very similar to back in the day when you used to actually max see your opponent, and it's like if they pressed on and actually tried to establish their plays, then you're getting something back in return that can disrupt them. But if they don't, then they're basically ending on a mediocre board. That actually happens a lot against decks like Thunder Dragon, or if you happen to be playing against like the Dark Warrior deck, you hit their Isode, does your opponent basically continue on giving you the reset, or do they basically just stop there knowing that they're probably going to lose if they do? And really, a lot of times it doesn't even matter. Your opponent's in such a bad position that they're not able to recover anyways. Let's just say your opponent goes for Isoda, right? You wait for them to summon from the deck and you hit them with the lost win. For your opponent to get back on track for their Gumblar combo or whatever they're trying to go for, not only do they need one extender just to get the Summon Sorceress on board, they're going to need a second extender to get the Summon Sorceress effect online, which to me that seems highly unlikely. And even if they do happen to have two extenders at that point, you're still going to be able to set the lost win. Now, if your opponent can do all of that and they still kill you, well, guess what? You were going to lose regardless. Even if you happen to have like impermanence, you were still going to lose because in that situation, impermanence and lost win acted exactly the same. The only difference was obviously lost win gave you the added benefit of being able to reset it. But I think that lost win is really one of the best trap cards in the game. I think that it's an A+ if you're going first. I think that it's probably about a B+ if you're going second. I love the fact that if you're playing a deck like ABC, or if you're playing these decks that can use Nightmares, obviously you can pitch them for Nightmares, you can pitch them for Buster Dragon, and then if your opponent wants to mount you, especially again if you're playing something like ABC, if they want to get over your Buster Dragon, they're gonna have to probably go in their extra deck. That means that you're going to be able to get the opportunity to reset the card. I just think that it's amazing, man. It's one of the best value cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh right now. I don't think that it's better than Infinite Impermanence, but I believe Infinite Impermanence right now is the best trap in Yu-Gi-Oh! And to be completely honest, I kind of feel like Lost Win is the second best card because of the versatility. Is it as powerful as something like Evenly Match going second? Hell no. Evenly Match in a vacuum is the most powerful trap in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! But when you look at the versatility, is Evenly Match good going first? No, it's fucking terrible. Lost Win is a card that's pretty fucking good going first, and it can be pretty good going second. And again, one of the only traps that gives you just straight up versatility because you get to activate the card twice. Even with cards like Breakthrough Skill, yeah, Breakthrough Skill is a card that you can activate twice technically, but the first activation of Breakthrough Skill isn't nearly as good as the first activation of Lost Win because, again, you can use Lost Win in the damage step, and the effect negation is permanent, which against decks like Thunder Dragons or, you know, Dinosaurs, like that can be incredibly valuable because those big boss monsters are basically just sitting ducks at that point. So you guys let me know what you think of Lost Win. Do you guys believe that it is a good card? I kind of feel like, you know, ABC, Cosmo, Dinosaurs, Ultra guys, I feel like all these decks should be playing it. But whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.